conduct this jobs tour to speak out tonight, each and every day, on this floor in our communities on the critical issue of jobs, and to remind the Congress that people do want to work, and we should hurry up and pass the American Jobs Act as a first start. Thank you.
Thank you, Congresswoman Lee. And thank you you were the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus as we created and passed the Affordable Care Act. And without your determination, many of the important provisions that we felt were important to our communities and to communities across the country would not have been there, and we thank you for that. And thank you for reminding us that the Affordable Care Act is a jobs bill.
Right.
It's reported that it may produce as many as 4 million jobs. And so it's not only a bill, an act, a law that would allow over 30 million people to finally become insured and provide access to quality health care for many people who have never had it, but it will also create jobs. And it's interesting how health care is connected to so many of the other things that we're dealing with. Two of the most important things that have to be fixed if we are to get out of this recession are we have to create jobs and we have to fix the foreclosure crisis. And there was an article in the New York Times today that by Craig E. Polak and Julia F. Lynch that was entitled "Foreclosures Are Killing Us." And it caught my eye. I just want to read a little piece of it into the record. A growing body of research shows that foreclosure itself harms the health of families and communities. In our 2008 survey of 250 people undergoing foreclosure in the Philadelphia area, 32% reported missing doctor's appointments, and 48% said they let prescriptions go unfilled, significantly higher rates than others in their community. A paper released last month by the National Bureau of Economic Research found that people living in high foreclosure areas in New Jersey, Arizona, California, and Florida were significantly more likely than those in less hard-hit neighborhoods to be hospitalized for conditions like diabetes, high blood pressure, and heart failure. And more than 1/3 of homeowners in our study had symptoms of major depression, and the study also found significantly more suicides. So these issues and these problems that affect, in large part, racial and ethnic minority populations are responsible for some of the health disparities that we talk about.
Will the gentleman yield just for me? I'm very pleased that you raised this article because the human toll, the physical and mental health impacts of these horrific public policies that either have taken place over the last 8 years or that are not taking place that we should enact are really seen each and every day in our communities.
Absolutely.
And people are desperate, they're suffering, and for the life of me I don't understand why especially Tea Party Republicans don't get it, because their people are suffering also.
Absolutely, absolutely. We've been joined by another former chair of the Congressional Black Caucus and the leader of our health care task force, Congresswoman Maxine Waters, and I'd like to yield such time as she might consume to her.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman Donna Christensen. I am very pleased that you took this time out this evening to give us an opportunity to continue to focus on our top priority in the Congressional Black Caucus. We are absolutely focused like a razor blade on the fact that jobs are needed so desperately in all of these communities that we represent. We recognize that unemployment is unprecedented at its highest levels perhaps since the 80s across this country, with 9.1% being that of the country. But we also recognize that in minority communities it is so much higher. In the Latino community, 11.3. In the African American community, 16.7. Why are we focused like a razor beam on this issue? Because we understand the pain that is going on. We understand the increasing desperation. We understand the growing hopelessness. And As public policymakers, we must do everything that we possibly can, not only to do actual job creation, but to help people out there understand that we know what's going on, we feel their pain, and we're prepared to do everything possible to come to their aid. So there are those who may get tired of us talking about it. There are those who wonder why we took our vacation time and traveled across this country in 5 cities with these job fairs and town halls that we did. But it's all because we understand, perhaps better than others, this pain and this desperation and this feeling of hopelessness, and that's not good for this country. And so you're absolutely correct. The Congressional Black Caucus went to Detroit. We went to Cleveland, we went to Miami, we went to Atlanta, and we went to California, Los Angeles. And what did we see? As it has been said over and over again, thousands upon thousands of people in line, desperate to be able to talk with employers. I must extend a big thank you to employers. They heard our call, and they showed up. And they were each of these meetings, these job fairs that we had, and people were able to fill out applications, to learn what the process is for that particular employer, to be able to talk with someone. And I had job seekers in Los Angeles who said to me, Ms. Waters, you know, I may not get a job, but I appreciate the opportunity that the Congressional Black Caucus is affording to me and others to be able to take a shot at it, to be able to talk with someone. So in Los Angeles, in my own community, 10,000 people showed up. We organized it in ways that they wouldn't have to stand in line for long periods of time. And thanks to the Crenshaw Christian Center that has a faith dome that holds 10,000 people, that we were able to get people off that sidewalk, through that dome, and to those employers, where we set up tents for 170 employers who came behind the dome. And it worked very well. Congresswoman, I want you to know this past weekend, as I traveled throughout the area, people came up to me and said, Ms. Waters, I got a job. I can't tell you how great that made me feel. And of course, it was only a small number of people that I encountered, but just to have them say, thank you, I received a job, was extremely impressive and inspiring, and it made me feel so very, very good. We're going to follow up with the employers and have them feed us back the information about how many people they were able to hire so that we can give a report on that. But in all of this, I am so worried that the unemployment in the African American community may reach as high as 20%. Our communities have been hit hard. I heard you allude to the foreclosures that we're experiencing in our communities. Our communities were targeted. They were targeted by financial institutions because they saw that people were eager to have homes. They understood that if you gave people an opportunity, that they would take advantage of it. But what they didn't say was they were coming up with all of these exotic products that literally got people into homes, but it could not be sustained because of the way these products were organized. You had people who were told, you don't have to pay anything down, you just have to pay a little down, don't worry about the resets, don't worry about what will happen 2 years from now. And these exotic products were products that had the devil in the details. And so people entered into mortgages that they certainly could not afford down the road. And so our communities are overwhelmed with foreclosures, the loss of wealth, the loss of the only wealth that many of our families certainly had and could ever have for years to come. I just want to share with you, in addition to the joblessness and the foreclosures and the loss of homes, the median wealth of white households is 20 times that of black households. Absolutely. and 18 times that of Hispanic households, according to a Pew Research Center analysis of newly available government data from 2009. These lopsided wealth ratios are the largest since the government began publishing such data in 1984, and roughly twice the size of the ratios that had prevailed between these three groups for the 2 decades prior to the Great Recession that ended in 2009. The median wealth of United States households in 2009 was $113,149, compared to $5,677 for blacks and $6,325 for Hispanics. The percentage of African Americans with no wealth has increased. About 35% of black households and 31% of Hispanic households have zero or negative net worth in 2009, compared with 15% of white households. Basically, just looking at the joblessness and the lack of wealth, the decreasing wealth tells the story. No communities can survive under these conditions. Everybody must be concerned about unemployment in general, but specifically these communities that are so bad off under the situation and the environment that we're living in at this time. And so we support the jobs bill. We want to create jobs in our infrastructure. This country needs to repair its roads and its bridges and its water systems, and we believe that creating those jobs will help all of our communities not only get jobs, but put money back into the economy. The economy needs stimulating. You stimulate the economy not by cuts, but by investing in the economy, both the private sector and the public sector. And so we've got to fight for it. We've got to stand up. We've got to resist any Tea Party efforts that say they came to Congress to dismantle government and they want to cut. They will not support anything that will raise revenues or even maintain revenues in some instances. We've got to push back on that. We've got to be strong. We've got to say to our colleagues, the facts are clear. They are in front of you. Nobody can deny these facts. And we're asking you to join with us in making sure that not only we deal with the most vulnerable in our society, but we pay attention to all of those who are suffering and the families that are suffering. And I want to tell you, I have witnessed that some of our friends on the opposite side of the aisle who represent very poor communities don't seem to be able to rise to the occasion to offer them support. It seems to me that they can basically talk about and to inflame about issues that have nothing to do with the economic well-being of their constituents. And so we have to keep reminding them that this is for everybody. This is for your constituents that you're not really representing, those poor people in rural communities who don't have health care clinics, those poor people who don't have jobs, those poor people who don't have the kind of education that they should have. And so thank you for bringing us to the floor this evening to once again put the focus on jobs. I yield back.
Thank you, Congresswoman Waters, and really thank you for the work that you've done to ensure that our financial regulatory agencies have women and minorities on their boards, for the work that you've done to help our homeowners stay in their homes, to address the mortgage crisis, and for all that you do. You know, even though many of the people who came to those fairs didn't get a job, they got hope. And many of them had given up.
That's right.
And so, and I'm sure that that re-energized them to go out and keep looking, and if they didn't get a job then, they will get one. So thank you so much for your leadership on that. I'd like to yield now such time as he might consume to the gentleman from Michigan, Congressman Hanson Clark. Thank you for joining the ladies this evening.
Well, you're very welcome, Representative Christensen. And what I wanted to do is, on behalf of all Metro Detroiters, I wanted to thank the Congressional Black Caucus, and in particular, our chairperson, Representative Maxine Waters, the head of our Jobs Task Force, for coming to Detroit, giving folks in Detroit some chance of getting a job, and definitely some hope that they have a future for themselves. And you know why this is so important for me? Because years ago, back in the 1980s, when we had our last big recession, I was one of those guys that was unemployed. And what happened was I did give up hope for a moment there, and it was devastating to me after I had lost my income and then my food stamps were cut off. When you give someone the dignity that they realize they have something to offer themselves, their family, and their city, it doesn't matter if they don't get a job at that interview. They will have then the drive to fight for themselves and not to give up. That's why our people are still here, thriving, because we didn't give up. But that jobs session did show there were a lot of folks in Detroit that still needed jobs. And I have introduced legislation to help provide those job opportunities to Detroiters, and if I could, I wanted to share with you and then share with our public how that would work. When you visited Detroit, Representative Waters, you may have noticed we had all this vacant land, these big parcels of land with just nothing on it, or maybe some burnt down houses or buildings. Those properties, we could actually build plants on those properties. As we built plants back decades ago that in World War II housed the arsenal of democracy that saved this world from fascism and helped us win World War II. Or those same plants that build those great American-made automobiles that put Detroiters to work, but also put millions of Americans back to work. So in the same way, we have the land to attract these new plants. We also have roads that have all these potholes in them that need to be filled. We have bridges. We have water systems that need to be repaired. We have a plan for a transit system that could connect Detroit with the suburbs, help people get to jobs in the suburbs, help folks in the suburbs come to Detroit and enjoy themselves, but we need matching money to be able to do that. What businesses have told me is what families have told me, is that they moved out of Detroit for a couple simple reasons. Number one, they didn't feel safe in the city. So it didn't matter how many economic development incentives we provided businesses. Few businesses would take those incentives if they felt that their office would be broken into or their employees would be robbed. Similarly, businesses who had to hire a large number of people, folks that they didn't know, they were concerned that the Detroit Public Schools really didn't graduate folks that had the ability to work on the job. They had the ability to read and write adequately to be able to do a good job if they were hired. And then finally, because Detroit had overspent a lot of its money, and they had to finance that deficit with bonds, and then pay off those bonds by raising the property tax, a lot of businesses said, look, for the services I'm getting, the taxes are too high. On top of it, many of their employees, even if they lived in the suburbs, had to pay a city income tax. Definitely their residents had to do that. So I said, look, the taxes are too high. The perception that the city is dangerous. I'm not sure if we're going to hire qualified people. They decided to leave the city. Safe streets, good schools, low taxes. If we could have those pieces in place, we could attract all the business. And I'll tell you why we could. Because in spite of all of our challenges in Detroit, we still have the best manufacturing know-how in this country, in this world. We have the trained workforce to put our state back to work and our country back to work. But we just need the money to hire the police officers, to hire the school teachers, to pay off our debt and cut our taxes. Now, this Congress says we don't have the money, but I say we do. It's in the very federal taxes that Detroit individuals and Detroit businesses pay every year. $2 billion a year Detroiters pay to the federal government, to the IRS in Washington. My bill, House Bill 2920, would ask this Congress to say this: instead of sending Detroit tax dollars to Washington, D.C., let's redirect that money to Detroit. Place it in a trust fund where it can't be touched, only to go to projects that will create jobs, to retire our debt, to hire police officers, to hire school teachers, to keep our school buildings open longer, high-quality schools, and yes, to cut taxes, to eliminate our city income tax and reduce our property taxes. That would attract jobs back. And then we'd have the money to fix up those roads, repair that deteriorating water system, and train people for jobs, and then possibly even create a job program like the SETA job program that I got hired into, that saved me from a life that my friends ended up into, in prison, incarcerated, on drugs, or dead. Those programs that this Congress stood for 30 years ago helped save my life, and it can help save this country. So I want to thank you for giving me this time to speak before this body. Detroit, we've got the money to put our people back to work. We pay it to the IRS every year. I'm asking this Congress to allow us to keep our money for 5 years, to put our people back to work as a pilot basis, and to show this country what Detroit can do for itself and for America. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
Thank you, Congressman Clark, and your passion is clear, and Detroit doesn't have a stronger advocate than you are, and we're pleased to be a co-sponsor of your bill.
Thank you again.
Thank you for joining us. So, as you've heard, the Congressional Black Caucus is here this evening. We're still waiting for the first jobs bill to pass this Congress, and as you've heard from my colleagues, we need to begin with the American Jobs Act, which was proposed by our President Barack Obama. And just to be clear, while we're advocates for the African American community, we are advocates for everyone. And this bill is good for everyone who lives in this country, and it is a good bill for our country. We happen to feel that putting people back to work in this country now is more important than fighting over an election that is more than a year away. The American Jobs Act provides tax cuts that will help businesses grow and create jobs. It will help provide incentives to hire the long-term unemployed. It will keep teachers and other essential workers like police and firefighters in their jobs where we need them to be. And it will strengthen, repair, and build needed and faulty infrastructure. And in doing so, will create even more jobs. And it would give people a decent job, which will allow them to take care of their families and to buy what we make here in America, and it will stimulate economic growth. It would give every American worker and their family a tax cut through extending the payroll tax holiday, and do more to fix the mortgage crisis that got us here in the first place by allowing more refinancing of mortgages. It would help our fellow Americans to take better care of their families, putting our children in better schools, supporting small businesses, building consumer confidence, and spurring the spending that our economy needs to get back on track. This is what this Congress ought to be doing, not focusing on the solitary goal of making President Obama a one-term president. That is a losing proposition anyway. No one should be willing to let our fellow Americans suffer, fall into and become mired in poverty, remain unemployed, lose homes, and cause our economy to crumble further just because they have political and whatever other differences with our president. Mr. Speaker, the Republican leadership led by the Tea Party extremists are taking this country in the absolute wrong direction by insisting on cutting and cutting and cutting important programs and services like the Women, Infants, and Children program, maternal and child health, and supplemental nutrition assistance programs at a time when there are more people and more children in poverty, by working to deny the opportunity for health care to over 30 million people who we work so hard to get insured, including sick children and people who would otherwise go bankrupt because of catastrophic illnesses over which they had no control, people who are already getting care because of the Affordable Care Act that is being so wrongly maligned. I agree with some of the posters I saw in the newspaper this weekend, calling for jobs, not cuts. Jobs, not cuts. That is what we have been saying all year, including here on the floor of the House every Monday that we've been in session. If our leadership listened instead of talk, 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 I believe that is what they will hear the American people at large saying. Jobs, not cuts. And we have a golden opportunity to listen to them. For over the last 2 weeks, there has been an occupation of Wall Street, because while homeowners and pensioners and many people have suffered because of their meltdown, we have not seen the kind of remedies for the folks on Main Street, the side streets, or the rural roads that would make them whole. They are speaking loudly and effectively on their and our behalf. And then right here in Washington, D.C., today and for the next 3 days, the Take Back the American Dream Conference is here. They will be on the Hill on Wednesday calling on us to end the nightmare that the dream is turning into for far too many people, and to restore the American dream, to which access to which has been the hallmark and the pride of this country. What is happening at this conference and the one in New York is that Americans are saying enough is enough. And they're fighting back against the cuts that are making it hard for far too many people in this country to survive. They're fighting back against the attempts to repeal health care reform, fighting back against proposals that would weaken Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, and fighting back against voter suppression laws. They're fighting for jobs, for a future for our children, and they're fighting for our democracy. It is so very interesting, this talk about President Obama and Democrats waging class warfare. We want everyone in this country to do their part to help this country recover from a deep recession, all because we want to let tax cuts that were only supposed to be around for 10 years, that have now been extended to 12 years, finally expire, like they were supposed to. Come on, colleagues, let's be honest, they were never meant to be permanent. And how many jobs have these tax cuts created, as was loudly touted they would do? In 2001, at the end of the Clinton administration, he handed over this government with an over $2 trillion surplus. Now, after those tax cuts enacted in 2001, after almost 12 years of them, we are in record deficits, in the worst recession since the Great Depression, and President Obama did not create that, he inherited it. Poverty rate is at the second highest in 45 years, and it is hitting, as you've heard, African American and Latino Americans hardest. The share of Americans in deep poverty, with incomes below half of the poverty line, is at the highest level ever recorded, and African Americans are more likely to be in extreme poverty. While we hear a lot about how much of a share of taxes the richest 1% or the richest 10% pay, let me remind everyone that white Americans' wealth is 20 times, and you heard it earlier, but it bears repeating, 20 times that of African Americans and 18 times that of Latinos. And that between 2000 and 2007, not 10%, not 20%, not 40%, but 100%, all of the increase in wealth went to the top 10% in this country. All. The top 10%. The gap between rich and poor got wider, the rich got richer, the poor got poorer. That's a very dangerous trend for the future of this country. And then unemployment has reached record highs as well. You don't hear about it much, you hear it from us, but in far too many places, our rural and our urban areas, communities of color, unemployment remains in double digits. And African American unemployment nationally is over 16%. But as you've heard, we know that it is higher than that in many parts of our country. So if we want to talk honestly about class welfare, class warfare is what too many people in this country have been experiencing since 2001. And now that we have a president who wants to end it, he is being accused of class warfare. If we really want to end class warfare, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle should be supporting rather than opposing him. Let's get real. In all of our 40 years, the Congressional Black Caucus has always been a caucus of action. Our agenda has been consistent, and we've pushed every Congress and every president, and so we resent anyone trying to put a wedge between us and our president to further their own agenda, one which is clearly not ours. But we continue to be the conscience of the Congress, and as Maxine Waters coined when she was chair, the fairness cops of our nation. That is why when we could see none of our 40 job-creating bills come to the floor, under the leadership of our chairman, Emanuel Cleaver, and the Jobs Task Force chair and former CBC chair, Maxine Waters, we called on the private sector as well as government agencies to come with us across the country to get people working again. And that is why we work so hard with our Hispanic and Asian colleagues to get the Affordable Care Act passed, and we'll work just as hard to see that it gets implemented. We are not going to sit quietly and let a vital door that is just opening for many to be slammed shut on our communities and communities like ours who need it most. Many scholarly reports have shown that just eliminating health disparities could save $1.24 trillion in just over 4 years in indirect and direct costs, in addition to saving lives. So if we really wanted deficit reduction, eliminating health disparities and achieving health equity is deficit reduction at its best. And that's why we will continue to work relentlessly as a caucus to save homes, to build and equip better schools, to support regulations that protect our families and all families from the health and other effects of pollution. We have also worked together on budgets, and because we know that our country can invest where needed in health care, education, green energy and job creation, and reduce the deficit at the same time, we are preparing to send our recommendation to the Joint Select Committee on Deficit Reduction. It will likely be based on our proposed 2012 budget, and it will end class warfare by allowing the high-end Bush tax cuts to expire while strengthening the middle class, continuing to create pathways out of poverty for our fellow Americans, and protecting Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. This country, Mr. Speaker, is fortunate to have a Congressional Black Caucus fighting on its behalf, and it is not only our duty, but it's our honor and privilege to do so. And with that, I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentlewoman yields back. The Chair will clarify that the President's message pertaining to the District of Columbia budget was referred to the Committee on Appropriations and ordered printed. Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 5, 2011, the Chair recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Gohmert, for 30 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I know my friend from the Virgin Islands, I have differences on political issues, but she was very gracious to me personally, and I will always be grateful, very grateful. Thank you. We do differ on some of the issues, and hearing my friend across the aisle from Michigan, Mr. Clark, he wants what's best for his constituents. He wants them to have jobs, wants them to have less taxes, wants them to be able to revitalize their city. And that is what people want on both sides of the aisle. We just have a difference of opinion on the best way to go about it. My friend from California had said that the Tea Party really doesn't want anything that will raise revenues. And actually, I know she believes that, but the contrary is actually true. And what we've seen historically is when you create jobs, even if the tax rate is lowered, if you do something that creates jobs, then the tax rate increases. Some people have tried to vilify me because I'm advocating getting rid of a rather insidious, sometimes think it's the most insidious tax we have, because it has convinced rank-and-file folks across America that they don't have to pay this tax. Some greedy, nasty corporation will pay the corporate tax. When the truth is, the corporations are nothing but collection agents. If they don't collect the tax by adding on price to the cost of their product, to the price of their services, they don't stay in business. They're a collection agent. So the fact is, if you were to drop that tariff that we lay on our own products to 35% tax, it's really a tariff. You eliminate that, and jobs come rushing back into America. The number one reason you get when you travel around the world, whether it's Africa, China, others tell me from South America, hey, we had to move because America has the highest corporate tax of any country in the world, 35%. China, 17%. And so you lower that tariff that corporations have to collect on their goods, jobs would come flooding back. And we could see Detroit become the car capital that it once was and that it should be. We would see those jobs come back. I thought in first questioning CEOs overseas that the #1 answer I'd get on why they moved was, too much regulation. Well, that was a problem. Difficulty in dealing with unions or too high wages compared to what people get around the world. That was a problem, but it wasn't the #1 problem. The #1 problem was the 35% corporate tax, a tariff we put on all American-made goods. I've had people who apparently with degrees are educated beyond their abilities say, but if you lowered or got rid of the corporate tax, where would all that tax money come from? Because they don't understand how jobs are created. They think that money, it's a zero-sum balance. It just would go away, and there'd be no more tax. We'd lose that much tax. And in fact, the liberal Congress that existed in 1974 when they set up CBO and set up their rules for scoring bills does not allow the Congressional Budget Office to score based on reality. They are forced to score under archaic, unrealistic rules that are not allowed to take into consideration past history in calculating future performance. Huge mistake. But the Democrats in charge in 1974 knew what they were doing. So you drop that tax. And like I've said, the American Jobs Act is my bill. After the president beat up on us for 6 days and it became very obvious he was more concerned about making speeches about the American Jobs Act than he was actually getting one filed and getting one pushed through, then I felt like if he's going to criticize me and our friends here for not passing the American Jobs Act, by golly, there ought to be one. So I did file one, and that's what it does. And I'm negotiable. If the president would like to come up 0 in corporate tax, I'm flexible. But the fact is, jobs would come rushing back into this country if the manufacturers, if the companies knew no corporate tariff is put on those products. They could compete around the world. We would retake the world. And I know there are people in this country, good folks, smart folks, that think we are better off as a service-oriented society in America rather than a manufacturing society. The trouble with that is, and as I heard from people in West Africa last year, we're their hope for freedom. If we don't remain strong, as one elderly gentleman told me, they have no chance of enjoying freedom in this life. Well, you can't be an international power and protect freedom, not here, not anywhere, unless you can produce the things that are needed in the event of war. That's why I'm an advocate for natural gas being used to power cars. We need to make sure it's safe, but it's cleaner burning. Some people say, no, we've got to get cars that run on electricity. They don't apparently realize that electricity has to be generated somewhere, and it's obvious that Solyndra is not going to be producing it for us. Maybe if we give them several $1 trillion instead of just $600 billion, maybe eventually they could come up with a product that would compete. But that hadn't happened. So mistakes have been made. Mistakes get made on both sides of the aisle. Republicans made a mistake in 05 and 06, my freshman term here, and I have to say that our friends across the aisle rightfully beat us on us back in 2006 for spending $160 billion more than we took in. We shouldn't have done that. And they promised they would get spending down under control and would not run a deficit like that if They were simply given the majority. They were for 4 years, and the spending went through the roof. Republicans made a mistake by spending more than was coming in by $160 billion, and then our friends across the aisle made a mistake over the last 4 years as they got that spending up over $1 trillion, $1.5 trillion more than we were bringing in. Major mistake. But I want to spend the remainder of my time tonight in talking about another problem that we've had here in the United States and with the federal government. Been a lot of talk in the last few days about the death of Anwar al-Awlaki. And it is important to note the things that we were told in past years about Mr. al-Awlaki. Pajamas Medium, it's a funny name, but Patrick Poole has done a good job doing some research on some of the old articles. For example, back in November of 2001, the Washington Post, let's see, I think they're going after our governor from Texas right now. Well, that same Washington Post had a wonderful blog back in November of 2001 and featured none other than Imam Anwar al-Awlaki. And yeah, he was allowed to use the Washington Post to try to convince people of what a man of peace he was. And you get the impression, certainly, the Washington Post said he was a good guy. You can look back November 19, 2001, and I printed this off of the internet from the Washington Post. Understanding Ramadan, the Muslim month of fasting, and they featured Imam Anwar al-Awlaki. Now, obviously, the Washington Post doesn't care much for the governor of Texas, but they certainly had a great appreciation for the man that was killed recently, featuring him in their publication to explain things for us. And they featured him explaining that about Ramadan. Isn't that wonderful? The Washington Post would reach out to someone who turns out wanted to destroy America, our way of life, thought it was a good idea to kill Americans, believed that actually it would be a good thing to bring down America. It was good the Washington Post would give him that much time because they're so open-minded, honorable people. So are they all honorable people, as Shakespeare had Mark Anthony saying. All those folks at the Washington Post, they're honorable people. I mean, why else would they give their paper, their moniker, to a man that they judge to be a man of peace? New York Times. New York Times had a good article October 19th of 2001, and they mentioned Imam Anwar al-Awlaki, spiritual leader at the Dar al-Hijra Mosque in Virginia, one of the nation's largest, which draws about 3,000 worshipers for communal prayers each Friday, said, quote, "In the past we were oblivious. We didn't really care much because we never expected things to happen. Now I think things are different. What we might have tolerated in the past, we won't tolerate anymore. There were some statements that were inflammatory and were considered just talk, but now we realize that talk can be taken seriously and acted upon in a violent, radical way," said Mr. al-Awlaki, who at 30 is held up as a new generation of Muslim leader, capable of merging East and West, born in New Mexico to parents from Yemen, who studied Islam in Yemen, and civil engineering at Colorado State University. So they featured what they believe to be a man of peace, and certainly the New York Times is full of honorable people. So are they all at the New York Times, all honorable people that had such nice things to say about the man who would destroy America. Of course, Fox News, published May 20th of 2011, had an article. It said, with the recent death, and again, this was May of this year, of Osama bin Laden, the life of another al-Qaeda-linked radical Muslim cleric. Well, that seems pretty hurtful of them, Fox News, to say about someone that the Times and New York Times and the Washington Post thought so highly of. Sorry that Fox News was so mean to somebody that the Times and the Washington Post like so much. But anyway, they said that documents obtained exclusively by Fox News and its special unit shed new light on his stint as a guest speaker at the Pentagon just months after the September 11th terror attacks. American cleric Anwar al-Awlaki, the first American on the CIA's kill or capture list, which seems a little mean of the CIA. I mean, the Washington Post, New York Times thought he was okay back in 2001. But the article says American cleric Anwar al-Awlaki, like I say, the first American on the CIA's kill or capture list, is considered a grave threat to U.S. national security. He now is hiding out in Yemen, where earlier this month a U.S. missile attack tried to kill him and his followers. The scene was much different on February 5, 2002, when the radical imam was invited to and attended the Pentagon event. Fox News obtained new documents through a Freedom of Information Act request as part of a year-long investigation called Fox News Reporting Secrets of 9/11. An internal Department of Defense email that announced the event with al-Awlaki also laid out other details, like a proposed menu including pork, which is prohibited by Muslims. The email states the chef will create something special for vegetarians. Anyway, the documents show that more than 70 people were copied on the invitation, which originated in the Defense Department's Office of General Counsel. It's home to the Pentagon's top lawyer. Quote, I have reserved one of the executive dining rooms for February 5th, which is the date that he, al-Awlaki, preferred, a Defense Department lawyer wrote in the email announcing the event. He, al-Awlaki, will be leaving for an extensive period of time on February 11th. The email states that New Mexico-born al-Awlaki was the featured guest speaker on Islam and Middle Eastern politics and culture. The Defense Department lawyer who vetted the imam wrote that she had, quote, had the privilege of hearing one of Mr. al-Awlaki's presentations in November and was impressed by both the extent of his knowledge and by how he communicated that information and handled a hostile element in the audience. So the article goes on and points out that al-Awlaki, a dual U.S. and Yemeni national, was interviewed at least 4 times by the FBI in the first 8 days after September 11th because he had ties to the 3 hijackers involved. There were 3 of the 5 hijackers on American Airlines Flight 77, which was flown into the Pentagon. Apparently none of the FBI's information about al-Awlaki, his ties to the hijackers, or his history of soliciting prostitutes was shared with the Pentagon. In any event, that's some of the articles. We also had it pointed out in Big Piece. Andrew Breitbart presents Big Piece, article that was November 9th of 2010, points out that al-Awlaki was involved in the training of Defense Department Muslim chaplains and lay leaders as an instructor at the Institute for Islamic and Arabic Sciences in America, IIASA, in the Washington, D.C. area. Controlled by the Saudi Embassy and operating under the Kingdom's Ministry of Higher Education, the IIASA served as the branch campus of the Al-Imam Mohammed Ibn Saud Islamic University in Riyadh. The institute was certified to train the Pentagon's Muslim chaplains until 2003. Many of the faculty members who held diplomatic passports had their visas revoked in January 2004. And the institute itself was raided by the FBI, Customs, and the IRS the following July. Al-Awlaki's role in the program was reported by Glenn Simpson at the Wall Street Journal back in December 2003, but hasn't been mentioned since. Writing about the IIASA's controversial role in the military chaplain program, Simpson noted, Anwar al-Awlaki, the former imam at a mosque in San Diego, also has lectured at the Institute. A congressional report on September 11th, released this July, said Mr. Awlaki counseled two of the hijackers while they stayed in San Diego and then transferred to a mosque that both hijackers attended in Northern Virginia shortly before the attacks. Mr. Awlaki, who is now believed to be in Yemen, has denied knowing of the hijackers' plans. More is now known about Awlaki's relationship with the 9/11 Tower plot. Time magazine reported that the cleric held closed-door meetings with two of the hijackers in San Diego, and the pair followed Awlaki to the D.C. area when he moved there in early 2001. Ani Anshur, who flew American Airlines Flight 77 into the Pentagon, joined them there. The three hijackers attended the Dar al-Hijra Mosque in Falls Church, Virginia, where Awlaki served as imam. Well, isn't that interesting? Also, this report from, this was a rewind, Anwar al-Awlaki leads prayers inside the U.S. Capitol for congressional Muslim staffers. Let's see. This is from Pajamas Media. Anwar al-Awlaki's appearance leading Friday afternoon prayers inside the U.S. Capitol following the 9/11 attacks. Fox News later reported Anwar al-Awlaki was not the only terror-tied al-Qaeda cleric leading prayers in the Congressional Muslim Staff Association. And then it goes on and points out there's footage of Awlaki leading prayers for Congressional Muslim staffers, which also included then CAIR, C-A-I-R official, and now convicted terror operative Randall Ismail Royer, shot for a PBS documentary called Muhammad, a Legacy of a Prophet. Interesting stuff. Let's see. And, of course, National Public Radio, that receives so much of our taxpayer money, reported November 1st of 2001 that Awlaki he was contrasted to Osama bin Laden as one of the, quote, moderates who want to solve the problems without violence, unquote, and someone who could, quote, build bridges between Islam and the West, unquote. Well, interesting stuff. It just doesn't seem that we seem to learn our lessons very well. We also know that this Attorney General not only had a Justice Department involved, which obviously included ATF involvement in selling guns to criminals, Mexican drug cartels, who we know that killed at least one, and there may be others. But this Justice Department dropped the charges against the individuals that were in the groups that were named co-conspirators in the Holy Land Foundation trial that was tried in Dallas, Texas. First to a hung jury. As I understand, it was 11-1 verdict. One person held up the verdict, so they tried it again. And the Bush administration's Justice Department intended, if they got a conviction of the 5 people charged with aiding terrorism, that they would then move forward. And in fact, the assistant U.S. attorney involved filed pleadings with the court, the district court in Dallas, Texas, the federal court, and also with the Fifth Circuit in New Orleans in response to some of those groups that were named co-conspirators to supporting terrorist activities with money, and basically said there's prima facie case here. There's enough evidence to keep them in as named co-conspirators. The conviction occurred, I believe it was November of 2008, 5 defendants, 105 counts, as I recall, and then rather than going forward as they should have, based on the evidence, the stacks and stacks, the boxes and boxes of evidence, this Justice Department decided to drop the matter. And it's understandable given some of the relationships that are involved. Of course, CARE, mentioned in one of the articles, was one of the named co-conspirators to financing terrorism in the Holy Land Foundation trial. And we know that ISNA was one of the named co-conspirators, Islamic Society of North America. And the head of ISNA is Imam Majid. And then we find out that actually Imam Majid, leader of a named co-defendant in sponsoring terrorism in the Holy Land Foundation trial, which this administration refused to pursue further. But Imam Majid, a year ago, was at the White House leading the White House in the Iftar celebration at the conclusion of Ramadan. And then, of course, we know that the second highest person in the National Security Agency, the Deputy National Security Advisor, Dennis McDonough, was invited and spoke and thanked Imam Majid there for the wonderful prayers in the White House and also for the wonderful introduction. They have a wonderful relationship. Well, isn't that special? Well, in the wake of Mr. Anwar al-Awlaki being killed in Yemen for his role having declared war on the United States, I can't help but reflect back on something that sets our country apart. And a new democracy visited earlier this year. I had a leader there say, you know, we're constantly worried about the military trying to take over because we never had a George Washington who did what no one has ever done before or since, led the revolution, military and revolution, won the revolution, resigned and went home. Nobody's done it before or since. What a man. Well, Washington, in his resignation that was sent to the 13 governors, and there's a painting of him tendering his resignation, at the end included a prayer. And he says in the prayer, we have his own words, and I won't read the whole thing. I now make it my earnest prayer that God would have you in the state over which you preside in his holy protection. He goes on and said, and finally, that he would most graciously be pleased to dispose us all to do justice, to love mercy, and to demean ourselves with charity, humility, and pacific temper of mind, which were the characteristics of the divine author of our blessed religion, and without an humble imitation of whose example in these things we can never hope to be a happy nation. Have the honor to be, with great respect and esteem, Your Excellency, most obedient, very humble servant, George Washington. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, I can't help but wonder if Mr. al-Awlaki ever knew the divine author of our blessed religion, who George Washington says, without an humble imitation of whose example in these things, we can never hope to have a happy nation. With that, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. Does the gentleman have a motion? The question On the motion to adjourn, those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. Accordingly, the House stands adjourned until 10 a.m. tomorrow for morning hour debate.
So that completes today's legislative session. But when the House returns on Tuesday, we expect work on another